Hey, everybody. It's Failure here. He's just dropping by, say hi on the Magog Morse live stream channel. Welcome to a random stream, everybody, behind the Magog. I want to introduce my guest today is Nachi Free. Everybody subscribe to him. His channel link is in the description. Great live streams. Awesome guy to talk to. Also an artist, I just learned. Say hi to the people, Nachi.
Hello, everybody.
We don't
a clever way to do it, but I was like, fuck it, just hello.
right. Also, if you guys want to help support the channel, I don't have super chats active yet, but the Streamlabs link is below, and I will be paying attention to those every now and again. Only if you guys want to. I do appreciate you just watching and dropping by. Looks like we got an audience now of about 15 people, so we'll just go ahead and get started. Nachi, we started streaming on your channel over there, and then Billy dropped out, Billy Bong, and we decided, hey, pop over to my channel and have a different discussion.
And the discussion I would love to have, man, is war and foreign policy. And especially you, man, you've lived this, dude, and I have an idea of how to get it started, how to get the ball rolling, but if you have an idea that you'd like to put out there, let me know.
No, yeah, well, I think, in case there's anybody watching that doesn't know anything about me personally, I did serve in Iraq. I did convoys. My father, I'm third generation military. My father served during, in the 80s and the 90s, the golden years. And was in, was part of the, like he served during the Gulf. And then my two grandfathers, my grandfather on my mother's side, my mother's father, served in Korea. And my grandfather from my father's side, my father's father, served in World War II. And so, yeah, I've been kind of a military family for a long time. And when I went into the military, I served overseas. I was stationed in England. And even though I was Air Force, and a lot of people think that that's the cushy job, which, for the most part it is, I was vehicle operations, transportation. I drove trucks, buses, forklifts, you name it. And because of that job, when I went downrange, I drove cargo all over Iraq. I did convoys. So I was, I was not parked behind a desk sitting in a chair, I actually, pounded the ground and chewed the same dirt as the Army, In fact, we pretty much took over convoys for a while from the Army because, they were they were needing a better way to do it, and we knew how to do logistics,
Right.
So luckily I did not, and, I say this with respect to the veterans. I didn't serve in the earliest days after 9/11. So I wasn't over there when they were franking, all the trucks were just Frankenstein together, welded metal and stuff to try sandbags in the floor to prevent, an IED from blowing their truck, up through the floorboards. But it was still 2009, 2010. I was kind of the last of the cowboys because after that, the Air Force kind of pulled out of convoys. And we were eventually just downsizing and pulling out of Iraq in general. So it was an interesting experience. So that's my military background, my war background, I guess you could say. There were good days and bads, obviously. There are some things I still don't talk about because they're just best left in the past. But outside of that, I'm open to answering any one of your questions because this stream was kind of your idea, Nachi. You wanted to talk about it. So, feel free to ask questions or, whatever.
Yeah. So then the first question is, so the years that you served were 2009, 2010.
That's when I went to Iraq.
Right.
I served from 2007 to 2012.
Right. Wow. And then that's the thing. Like, I am one of those people that does agree that we needed to depose Saddam Hussein. And as far as the weapons of mass destruction, I always felt like, and here's where it becomes tricky. And this is why I wanted to throw in the word foreign policy into the whole mix. As much as I thought we should depose Saddam Hussein, part of it was because of the weapons of mass destruction, which you could argue that he did have, which, if I'm not mistaken, were used against the Kurds, right?
Yes.
But now here's what I go ahead.
What people mix up with weapons of mass destruction, for some reason, when people hear WMD, when Bush was always saying, he's got weapons of mass destruction, he got WMD, for some reason, people just instantly thought that meant nuke.
Right. No, for sure.
And that's not necessarily true. We know that Iraq didn't have nukes, but we sure as shit knew he had sarin gas.
But now here's the thing. My joke to people when they were like, oh, he doesn't have weapons of mass destruction. I was like, what are you talking about? We're the ones that have the receipts to those weapons of mass destruction, because that's the tricky fucking thing. At one point, the U.S. government actually helped Saddam Hussein, especially when Saddam Hussein was going up against
the Russians.
Iran.
Yep.
And Iran. And they knew what he was up to, dude. And that's where it does become like, and I understand that at the core of foreign policy, to a large degree, it's almost like better the devil you know than the devil you don't. We can't go to war with everyone. We can't fucking depose every damn dictator. So you almost have to dance with these guys to a certain degree.
Right.
You know what I mean? But that's where, yeah. But now I'm curious to hear it from the perspective of somebody who was there in Iraq. Did it ever cross your mind while you were there? Like, damn, dude, I'm fighting a war that is partially the fault of my own government. Because,
well, yeah. I mean, you think about a lot of things, but for the most part, it's, destabilizing the Middle East so that the Russians didn't gain a foothold there was on the U.S. docket the moment the Cold War ended. We knew the next place would be the Middle East. We knew it. We knew it in 1989. We knew it all the way through through the 80s. We knew that's where it was going to go. Russia was making friends over there, and we knew we didn't want to give them ultimate control of the Middle East. So a lot of decisions were made, especially in the intelligence community, to subvert Russian control in the Middle East. Now, that was during the 80s when we feared communism. It was before the wall came down. It was before the USSR crashed and burned. And obviously not knowing the future or when the Cold War was going to end, because it'd been going on since the fucking, 50s. We really didn't foresee an end to the USSR that quickly. And so, yeah, we started to work against them. And the moment we started doing that, we were already in it. We had made friends. We had propped up leaders over there that would be allies with us and not Russians. We were, subverting their control over there. And then the wall came down and the Iron Curtain fell and the USSR collapsed. But once that happened, we were already neck deep in the Middle East. There was no just like pulling out. We had made too many promises. We had sold too many weapons, and we knew it was going to be a problem. Now, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No, go ahead, man. You finish. I thought you were done.
Yeah. Now, decisions were made on a part of our government that were bad decisions. Of course, I don't always agree with everything my country does, but those decisions were made, and then every leader and generation after that had to inherit those problems. So you could say that I take kind of a neutral stance on that. I'm not one of these, like, I hate America for what we've done over there. Like we did like war is hell, and we did what we did, and now we're trying to clean it up. And maybe we're doing it wrong. Maybe we're doing some of it right. I don't know, because that place is a fucking mess. And it's not just, and it's, yeah, part of it is our fault because we started interfering, but at the same time, them people have been fighting over the same hunk of desert they've been fighting over for the past 3,000 years. All the way back to the Bedouin tribes before the rise of Islam, before Muhammad was even born. Them people were fucking warring nations, So there's just there's just a massive cultural problem with the Middle East in general.
Oh, for sure.
We threw a little gasoline on the fire, but the fucking fire was there, and it's been burning for a long time.
No, and I would even say, like, talking about that, like you said, it goes back 3,000 years. I think that's unfortunately, and like, I don't want to start getting into, this almost, I wouldn't even say it's pseudo-philosophical, but I think it almost comes down to a molecular level, because that was not just something going on in the Middle East. I think that's been a problem with the human species since we've been around. And I think that's a factor of life. unfortunately, that's what I mean, like getting down to the molecular level, all of life boils down to just matter and energy, and matter and energy is constantly creating and destroying itself in order to, there's this balance. I'm wondering at what point, you know, we will finally be able to cut through. That's why I think it's so important to cut through all the fucking religious bullshit, because the religion just blinds people to the reality and it's in the science. Like I see the causes of so many of these things. Like let's take it back to Iraq and Saddam Hussein. There's always going to be one of those Saddam Husseins. There's always going to be one of, almost always men. And it's clearly, I'm not about toxic masculinity, but there's always, when you look at dictators, they're always guys. And I'm not going to get too much into Cuba, but we lived it with this other fucking piece of shit, Fidel Castro. And it is amazing that within the human species, you always get these men who are highly intelligent because they're fucking not stupid. Sure. But they're psychopaths, and they have a very strong will to power. And it's amazing how millions of people will blindly follow these men to their fucking deaths. And I think that's at the real core of it all. But I was curious to see.
Well, I think it plays on the biology to want to be a part of the tribe, if you will. No matter where you go, no matter how much you want to say that I'm not part of any community, and I think for myself, you're still by nature going to kind of appeal to the tribalism in some way. Like you're going to be a part of a country, you're going to be a member of a neighborhood, you're going to have a circle of friends. Tribalism works on macro levels all the way up to, you know, global levels. And part of that is anytime a dictator has risen to power, it's because of a cultural movement within the tribe. They don't just show up with guns and go, okay, we took this shit. You know, no, it's slower. It's a slower build than that. They have to insert themselves and then start spreading these ideas. And then once enough people buy the ideas, that's when they gain power. You know, look at Mao's China. You know, he thought an end to ancient Chinese traditionalism, destroying all the art of the past, you know, thousands of years, and rebuilding the country in a new way of thinking was a positive thing. That's what Mao thought. That's why they had a little red book of like rules and regulations on how to live. And Chinese people were even forced to give up their names if their name was based in Confucius, you know, teachings, because he wanted to destroy all Chinese tradition and become more modern. And that was his way of thinking. Unfortunately, he created a communist regime of fucking death and fucking despair, you know. But, you know, that's where it comes from. Enough people were behind that way of thinking that it happened. It was a cultural revolution, Mao's China, you know. You've got to keep that in mind. And when it comes to the Middle East, it's the same thing. Religion is culture. Religion is a huge part of culture. Right. And the culture of the Middle East is heavily based in Islam because of what Islam became. So you have to look at the origins of Islam and what the people of the Middle East were before Islam rose, and why it was in and of itself, the teachings of Muhammad was a cultural revolution of the time that created thousands of years of what we see the Middle East as now.
No, for sure. And that's what, however, and I wish we would talk about it more. I mean, not when I don't mean just you and I. Like, I wish that was more in that national conversation so we could really understand where all this friction is coming from. Because it is a damn shame when I hear people say, well, it's American imperialism and you're an ethnocentrist for thinking that Western values are superior. And it's like, no, it's not a matter of Western values. It's a matter of things that have been proven to work over time. Right. And the United States happens to be one of the few countries that has stumbled into those truths and realities. And yet here in this country, we have our own religion that kind of blinds us to a large degree, which is Christianity. And I'm assuming, and I'm sorry, in no way, shape, or form am I going to do I care to offend or anything like that. But I'm curious, do you think within your family were they ever prompted, for their military service because of some religious cause? Was it ever like, well, we're fighting for, because of God, stuff like that?
No. I mean, fighting for God and country is one of those things that just is kind of part of being a patriot, but it's not really. At least with my family, it was never really like part of the reason why they did it. My dad joined the military because he suddenly found himself with my older brother and my mom pregnant with me. And he was working a door-to-door salesman job, making no money. They were living in a very, very small kind of single wide, mobile home on my grandparents' land and going nowhere. And my dad just was like, fuck this. I need to have a better life for my family. And so he walked into a recruiter's office. That was that.
Yeah, and that was something else that I wanted to kind of talk about too and work my way around. That it is weird how weird, whatever. It's unfortunate that there are economic opportunities to be found in war, and that's why, coming back to the foreign policy, I wonder to what degree we are pushing some of these wars because of that, because clearly there are people enriching themselves within the military industrial complex to keep wars going.
Yeah, that's not even an arguable point. I don't even think we even have to talk about that. Everybody knows that. There's always going to be somebody who takes advantage of a situation like that to make money, sell weapons for mercenary companies like Blackwater, government contracts, build planes, build tanks. The reason Germany was so powerful is because their war machine also powered their industrial revolution after World War I. World War I nearly collapsed Germany's economy. I mean, that economy went to shit. It was, then people were waiting for change. They were primed and ready for the Nazi party to step up and go, you know what? It's all those rich bankers. It's all their fault. Let's take back the country for the people. It's always these like proletariat versus the bourgeois. That those kinds of movements always prop up dictators for some reason.
Oh yeah, that they take advantage of those situations that are there and stuff. I just I wonder to what degree though we as the United States, can we ever finally put an end to these? Like, I don't know, will we ever have peace on earth? And believe me, I'm not a beatnik or anything like that, but I wonder.
Bum, get a job, you bum.
That's what I'm trying to do now. So I'm trying
Why
to do
don't
now.
you go back to your drum circle, you bum.
No, and look, war. Look, there's not a whole lot of military history in my family. I mean, I've had cousins that did join the army and the Navy and stuff. But I did have my grandfather, my paternal grandfather, dad's dad. He was in the real Revolutionary War of Cuba, fighting machete in hands, getting lost out at sea. And it does seem, but like with him, it was a matter of fucking survival. I mean, the Cuban people really were being oppressed by the Spanish imperialists,
Sure.
And then the real irony is that our family heritage comes from Spain. So it's like you're almost fighting against your own, not even ancestors. You're probably going to be fighting against someone who is the second cousin twice removed from your fucking great grandfather, some shit like that.
Right.
I think how many people my grandfather ended up killing that he might have been fucking related to. That's
yeah, but that's the rise of conflict. I mean, look at how many Americans, once we became America, threw down their loyalty to their ancestry of Europe. Yeah. And when like the Irish came, they were like, "Get off of our land. We're real Americans." It's like, wait, you just got here too. Like, if you think about it, and that just happens, like once again, it's the microcosm of tribalism, and conflict breeds that. Human beings by nature do very, very well in small groups of 200 or less, because everybody within that tribe or community has a purpose. After about 200 people, you start getting those class separations because there starts to become people in the community that don't necessarily provide.
Yeah, no, and not only that,
they don't have a role, you know.
Yeah. Did you ever read Malcolm Gladwell's The Tipping Point? The tipping point. I think part of the reason why, and throughout history, you look at it, you see a lot of these army, even like within the Roman army, like they kind of found that 150 people was kind of the tipping point for the, for how do you call it, for breaking up their troops, right? So you would never have, I guess, a battalion. I think they're called battalions. Correct me if I'm wrong. Battalions were never usually more than about 150. And the reason being is because there's human beings individually can only process about 150 other people. That's about as much as your brain can handle in terms of remembering names and remembering, you know, relationships. And also that when you go to a big party, you'll notice there's only so many people you could fucking associate with.
Yeah.
And I've noticed, I even noticed that within my own phone book. When I started keeping my phone book through Microsoft Excel, after reading that, I went to my phone book. And because the thing is, I would usually update my phone book after I would have too many people. And I would create a new sheet. I would keep the old ones, but I would start, you know, okay, this person, I don't know, this person, and dude, it was around 150. It was around, each Excel sheet was around 150 people that I would have. I was like, holy fuck, man. Because after a while, you just start forgetting people and they don't mean anything to you. And you try to keep it down to that. Right. And that's why I would love to understand war and foreign policy almost from that molecular standpoint of just survival, because I think it's just.
Yeah, but the problem is the deeper you go into just the biology and the nature of humans, the simpler it actually gets, and so it doesn't really solve any problems. Because you can start with this huge, if you work backwards, you start with this huge complex thing, which is economy, which is, you know, foreign, dealing with foreign nations that have different cultures, culture clashing. And then you have like different groups you have to deal with in different countries and everything. So it's this massive thing that's hard to understand. It really is. It's economics is not my 100% strong suit. I'm interested in it. I know enough to kind of get by and hold a conversation about it, but I am not by at any means an economy expert, you know. You know, but at the same time, if you start breaking that down and you start with this massively complex thing and you just start breaking it down, the end goal is just we fucking have lizard brains and we just sometimes conflict is just what fuels, you know, our natural predilection to become the better of the society out of the societies that exist. And that's really what it is. It's a drive to make your tribe number one.
Yeah, and really. And ultimately, it's just survival. It's just trying to survive, and
right.
I think that's the magic of. Well, that's I think the secret of life, and that's the one thing that science and philosophy just cannot seem to answer. What is that thing that keeps people from everyone just killing themselves? Like, fuck this game, dude. I'm done with this game. I'm fucking gonna kill myself. Done. And you don't. So you don't. Like right now, I've got, you know, I wouldn't say that I have a huge struggle in life. But there's a lot of times I think to myself, you know what, I can end all this shit with just killing myself. And I don't. I keep going. I'm like, let me solve the fucking problem. Let me solve this fucking problem. Knowing that I'm going to die in the end anyway. You know?
Sure. Yeah.
Which, by the way, look, trying to bring it back to Iraq and stuff. Did you ever have that? Were there ever, I'm sure you probably did, but I would love to know a specific story that you'd be willing to share. Was there ever a moment you were like, why the fuck am I doing this? Like, was there ever a command that you saw that was so counterintuitive or counterproductive that you were like, I'm just making Dick Cheney rich by fucking driving this convoy? Did you ever have like a situation like that, or?
Not really.
Nope.
No, because there is a different part of you that takes over when you're in a hostile war zone. And it's not the deep thinking, philosophical side. It's I'm going to go do this fucking job. I'm going to come back alive, and I'm going to make sure all my buddies come back alive, and that's that.
Right. No,
Far
I
worse.
can only begin to imagine. And what about another reason why I'm kind of glad I never joined the military is because I feel like I would have fucked up. I would have fucked up so bad with those commands, dude. Because whenever all I know about the military is what I've seen in the movies, and I hear those, okay, officer, okay, we need you to go northwest bound, and like all that crackling through the fucking walkie-talkie. You're like, what the fuck am I supposed to do? I caught half the fucking instructions.
Well, that's why the military. Yeah, the reason, because you've never served, you can't really fully understand, and that's not anything against you. It's just you have a different mindset when you go in the military. They break you down and rebuild you back up. Your training kicks in. It's a wholly different society. Now, it has its own problems, and it's run very much like a business in many ways with a rank structure. There are people above you and below you, and all that stuff. And for the most part, if you're not in a war zone, everybody in the military kind of lives normal lives. You have a house, you go grocery shopping, you go to work, you come home, you party on the weekends, you go and travel, you go see things. But when you're in a war zone, that training really hardcore kicks in, which is why you do training every time you go down range. You don't just go down range. They sent me to convoy training in Texas for a month before we ever set foot in Kuwait, and it's hardcore training. I mean, I was up on a hill in Texas driving trucks through mock battle zones with, fake explosions going off and people yelling at you. And if you got wounded, your friends had to stick needles in your arm and perform combat life-saving skills on you, even though you weren't really hurt because it was training. And that mentality gets bashed into your head, and then they send you down range and it just kicks in. You know what to do. You know how to handle your convoys. And if any problem comes up, you solve it. You get with your commander, you get with your TC, you get with your, your convoy commander, and you just work the problem. And you don't have a lot of time to sit around and think, oh my God, the military industrial complex is forcing me to do this. Like, you don't sit there and think about that. You think about things like, man, that explosion last night was really fucking close. I don't think I really just kind of want to make it to the other side of this thing. And but you also have this kind of sense of pride. You're getting this job done, and the military really relies on not just like patriotism for your country, but this loyalty you build with the unit you're with. And so it keeps it kind of, micromanaged in this way. So you're not thinking about the big picture. You're thinking about the guy next to you.
And that was another crazy thing, talking about the guy next to you. In the early years of the second Iraq War, after 9/11, which was like 2003, 2004, I remember just, following. And at that time, I didn't really know where I stood. And that was long before I even heard the term social justice and all that shit, before I started getting political. But I was just trying to understand, because my gut instinct was we should depose Saddam Hussein. That was my gut instinct. Like, I never felt like fucking, blood for oil. And I'm like, dude, certain things need to get done.
Yeah.
Yet when I forgot what I was subscribed to. And it was like because I wanted to see, the anti-side, like the anti-war side. And so I was getting from some media outlet like reports of all the soldiers who were dying, because that was one of the ways that they were trying to like stop the war. Like, look at everybody who's dying. And they were giving you specific, they were showing you the names and how these people died. And like on a daily basis, you would almost see at least, or let's put it on a weekly basis from what I remember, at least 20 people. 20 American soldiers dying. And out of those 20 that died, dude, like almost half of them were like from some fucking mistake. Like, one of them was just, in firing training, and he didn't have his fucking helmet, and kabank,
Yeah.
Another one was fucking, I don't know. They just, the medic didn't fucking, heal his wounds properly or something like that. And the guy fucking died from a gangrene that, right now I'm just making these up as I go along. But I just remember so much of it was just either incompetence or some horrific mistake. It wasn't so much battle that was killing the soldiers. And did you experience that also? Did you see people just dying from Holy fuck, that could have been avoided if you just put your helmet on or okay.
No, nothing like that happened. I mean, I know that that's a statistic and that friendly fire and accidents are a thing. But for the most part, the only people I knew that got injured or or killed were from IEDs or EFPs.
Because IEDs were, I know, explosive devices. What was the I for again?
IED stands for improvised explosive device,
Right.
and EFP is not EFP. Sorry, I'm getting them mixed up, but there's a type of bomb. Yeah, it is EFP called that us convoy people feared more than an IED. I've seen an IED go off, and with our armored trucks, it was like, oh, that felt funny. Unless it's like a 400-pound bomb buried in the dirt, an IED actually wasn't what us convoy people feared. It was EFPs, explosive form projectiles.
Okay. All right.
Yeah, those are bombs that are off the side of the road, and they're like a copper plate packed into a tube. And when the bomb goes off, the copper melts into a spear and blows right through your armor.
Wow.
And I've seen an EFP blow a 12-inch hole through 8 inches of armor like it was fucking butter. And I was a mile and a half back, and that bomb shook my truck. That was easily a 300-pounder.
And by the way, talking about these things you're mentioning right now, it made me think how many of those weapons were actually at one point supplied or sold to the Iraqis by Americans. So in other words, it
wasn't though.
No. Okay. No. Correct me if I'm wrong, dude.
Yeah. No. Like literally 100% of the IEDs that we came across were Russian ordnance. Then people use AK-47s and fucking old Russian, mortar rounds and Russian bombs and stuff. The Russians pumped more weapons into the Middle East than we ever did. However, our great shame is we gave weapons to certain individuals of the Middle East, like Saddam Hussein, when we propped him up into power. We gave them the weapons that are now illegal by the United Nations. But it was the 80s, and they weren't illegal yet. So we were like, here, have some fucking gas, like here, have some fucking sarin, here's some napalm, and shit like that. And that was a bad idea. But most landmines, most bombs, most mortar rounds, pretty much 100% actually, I would go ahead and say most of those rounds were all Russian made, Russian and Chinese.
Huh.
Most of the rebel forces and the freedom fighters and the ISIS guys and the Taliban and all them, they are not sitting in caves with sarin gas sold by the United States. They're not sitting in caves with Tomahawk missiles sold by the United States. They are sitting in caves with shit sold to them on the black market from Russian, like Russian break off, what are they called? They're kind of like these little break off nations of Russia after USSR fell. Like just weapons factories were abandoned, and they just people just grabbed all the weapons they could and started selling them. Like I swear to God, I have not seen. I never came across and maybe somebody else's experience out there is different. I only served for 10 months in Iraq on the ground. I seen a couple IEDs and a mortar round hit about 200 yards from me and didn't go off. It was a dud. But I've never seen one that was like American made or American designed. It was all old Russian shit from like the Cold War. It was all like 1970s, 1980s, even some stuff from the 60s that was designed all the way back then, Right. Then people aren't running around with brand new American weapons like fucking M16s and shit. No, they got fucking Kalashnikovs from like 1970. This is not what was complicated about Iraq war. When you put boots on ground in a country like that, you're fighting against people that blend in with the crowd. You're fighting a war of attrition. You're fighting guerrilla war. And we've learned that is almost an impossible war to win. That's why we kicked the British's ass. We tried fighting them their way, meeting them on the battlefield, pointing muskets at each other and firing. But what really won the Revolutionary War was all of our militia guys, cutting off supplies, using the land that we knew, using the home field advantage by cutting off supply routes, attacking soldiers behind the scenes, bombing ships in the harbor so they'd sink. Those things are what won the Revolutionary War. They're the reason why Cornwallis never made it out of Charleston, South Carolina. He should have been in Virginia within the first 6 months of that fucking war, but he couldn't move out of South Carolina. He couldn't move out of Charleston because of all the militia fucking everything up. And nobody knew who the militia were because they weren't in uniform. They weren't meeting people on the battlefield and following the rules of war that have always been kind of used. They were people wearing normal clothes that you didn't know was the enemy. The British would march into a town and they'd be like, who here? And everybody be like, no, we're loyal to the British. You're welcome here. And they'd feed the British and they'd feed the soldiers and drink with them and be like, yeah, we love that you're here. We don't want about part of this American Revolution bullshit. And then the British would fall asleep and the militia would be like, yeah, we were lying, slit their fucking throats. All
this fear and love and war.
Yeah. It's hard to fight a war when you don't know what your enemy is. That's why the Gulf War was won in 4 days. Seriously, that was not a long war. It wasn't even a war. It was a conflict. We came in there, when it was Saddam Hussein.
Yeah. Talking about the first one.
Yeah. Back in the 90s, the Gulf War. When Iraq tried to move into Kuwait and we were like, no, that ain't happening. No, you ain't doing that. And we went there and Iraq was like, we have a superior army. We have tanks. We have uniforms. We knew who our enemy was because of that. And our Air Force just moved in and bombed the shit out of them. And then our soldiers moved in and just fucking killed we lost 3 people in that war. Seriously, that was the casualty list. It was a fucking cluster. It was just a slaughter. The Iraqi army just gave up within no time at all. They were like, fuck, we picked the wrong fight. But after that, they kind of learned. They were like, well, we can't just meet American soldiers on the battlefield with tanks and people in uniforms so that they know who to shoot. Fuck that. We're going to blend in with the crowd and we're going to set a damn bomb off. That's a hard war to win.
Which is what made the post, because I don't refer to them as the Gulf War, which I guess I should, the Iraq War. I guess that's what made the Iraq War extended so long. Even though I thought that the Iraq War, we deposed Saddam Hussein in the Iraq War very quickly too. But then
we did. It didn't take long at all.
It became this clusterfuck, which we're still dealing with now with ISIS. And now let me ask you this, because this stream is basically me asking you questions, because obviously you know about this shit way more than I do. With ISIS, to what degree is it true that we're almost underhandedly, we've been supporting ISIS to a certain, because I've seen those reports, and not from fucking the Young Turks. Yeah, I've seen those reports from mainstream outlets and stuff like that, that to a large degree ISIS is almost our own fault. We've supplied the wrong people,
Well, of course we have. We've always done that, trying to just say it, but the point isn't picking the wrong people. We're always going to pick, let's say there's a dictator and he's starting to kind of go against what we want him to do because we put him into power like Saddam Hussein did. So then we go in and supply the rebels that are trying to overthrow it instead of directly overthrowing him, right? That's what we do. And then when they gain enough control, they turn against us too. And so we pick their enemy and supply them in the hopes that it happens all over again. It's a vicious cycle because they're always going to eventually just turn on America and just be like, get out of our country, But ultimately, we're just supplying the different revolutions that want power. But the point is, what I'm getting at is the point is not necessarily to gain friends, but to keep the Middle East destabilized. We don't want them becoming an industrialized nation that can possibly nuke us in the future. We would much rather lose a few thousand soldiers on the ground in a war like Iraq than say just let them be and let them get fucking uranium from Iran and Pakistan and fucking have the Russians sell them fucking nuclear technologies and then have to deal with them 20 years in the future when they decide to build a fucking bomb.
Right. That's the crazy thing. It almost seems like it does boil down to good versus evil. And that's where I do see the United States as good. And I think the proof is in the fact that you and I are having an open discussion on the internet where we're not criticizing the U.S. government, but we're fucking pinpointing these things. You can't do this shit like in where my family's from in Cuba. Forget that. I'd have fucking people. They would somehow figure this little fucking stream out, and they'll be knocking on my fucking door, and I'd be gone.
Sure.
That's where I do know. That's why my faith still does lie with this nation, and then with, you know, I guess Western Europe and other ones. And that's where it is crazy. It's crazy to see that there is almost half of the world's population doesn't see like that with Russia. And when I see certain YouTubers, like, what's this guy's name? Lionel Nation. I don't know if you ever. I like that guy as far as, and I know he's got also Cuban heritage in his family and stuff like that. But dude, that guy makes excuses for fucking Putin. I've noticed. I'm like, and I think it's on RT. He comes out on RT. Russia Today, and like, you know, whenever he talks about, oh, everybody, you know, we have this big, we're still dealing with this Russian, and it's like, dude, it's there for a reason.
There's a reason we like Putin, even though we know he's a terrible fucking guy, and that's because he's willing to talk to us. The last thing we want is another hardline Bolshevik that has such fucking, you know, such fucking loyalty and ties to the old KGB that he won't even sit down with our president or our leaders or anything. And ultimately, that's what it boils down to. I mean, we know Putin's an evil fucking bastard, but at least he talks to us. He comes to the table. Because we've dealt with hardline Bolsheviks before, and we've dealt with those hardline KGB types before. We've dealt with, you know, Khrushchev's fucking guys, you know, during the Cuban Missile Crisis and the Bay of Pigs, and, you know, the entire, you know, like, oh my God, they're parking nukes off of our fucking shore in Cuba. Like, we had to deal with those hardliners that were like, if you hit Cuba, we're going to hit your missiles in Turkey, and then you'll have to retaliate with a bomb to this place, and then it'll just start World War III. You know, and we were really happy that Khrushchev used backline channels to contact President Kennedy and bring an end to the Cuban Missile Crisis by invoking a blockade, an economic blockade to Cuba. That's how we actually diffused the situation. And if it wasn't for those backline channels to Khrushchev, who was like kind of the acting leader, but he had a lot of hardline KGB types kind of writing his messages for him. You know, because Khrushchev was actually kind of like scared of the remnants of the, or, you know, the hardline fucking, you know, intelligence community in Russia. Like, those were the ones who really had the power. You know, he couldn't send us a direct message through the Kremlin because the people at the Kremlin would have changed the message. And the reason I use hardline so much is because that's what the Russians were. They were the type of people that appreciated a show of force as their political currency, you know?
Right.
And that happens a lot in the Middle East too. Like, even if Saddam Hussein had wanted to send a message to us that was more like, okay, let's work this out, it probably would have been lost in translation on purpose.
He would come across as weak, and he would come across as the dove and all that shit.
Exactly.
Which is sad. Which makes me wonder. I wonder what is the ultimate world view that these people, the Putins, and like if the Putins and the Ayatollah Khamenei's, and forget about North Korea, but like what do they really want to see in the end? Like, what is their idea of the ultimate world if they had it their way? Clearly seeing themselves in total power, that's for sure.
Yeah,
seeing themselves top.
I would like to address Bullwinkle in the chat because it's been a while since I looked at the chat, so I'd like to say hi to everybody. Bullwinkle says Putin was colonel in KGB. Yes, I know, but he's still willing to talk to us. Yes, he's very loyal to the old KGB. I get that. I mean, we're talking about the 80s here and stuff, but that was also on the kind of downturn of the USSR. And you could still be like a member of the KGB and the old, you know, USSR, Mother Russia type way of thinking, but still also realize that we don't want to go back to those days. And so we need to talk, because when the talking stops, guess what? People die.
No, for sure, for sure.
Okay, so we want Russian leaders to come to the table. We don't, we do. Like this whole like, oh fuck Russia, we don't blah blah. They're interfering with our elections and stuff like that. I don't see any real evidence or validity to that, but I do see a need to sit down with nations and actually have peace talks, even if we're enemies. Because, like I said, we need to just keep talking. We may never solve any problems. We may never ever become friends, but we need to keep talking until we're old and gray and we're just old men. But we need to keep talking because when the talking stops, people die.
It starts, yeah. No, for sure, for sure. And I wonder, and look, and that's why I have this naive faith in something like YouTube and with what YouTubers like us are trying to do. Where if many times it feels like we're just talking shit and barking at the wind. But I'd like to think that ultimately, you can maybe change one person's mind halfway, and then eventually they change completely, which they change somebody else and stuff. Because I do believe that we could, as a species, finally get over, like convince enough people that, hey, listen, it's understandable that you have tribalistic tendencies and stuff like that, but there is a much better way to survive on this planet that does not involve tribalism, and much less tribalism that is being fueled by falsehoods, religious falsehoods and stuff like that. I really do believe that you can educate enough people to finally see their own leaders for the fucking for the monsters that they are.
Yeah. I mean, I think that was like the military-industrial complex, and this is a weird argument, and I'm going to go ahead and make it though. But the military-industrial complex did a good thing. It is a terrible machine sometimes, yes, especially with certain people wanting to take advantage and just make a shit ton of money off of war. But the military-industrial complex made us the most powerful nation in the world, not necessarily because of technology and the industrial growth of this nation and the democracy and the Constitution and all that, but because we put more money into our defense budget and developing ships, planes, and things like that, that we became just a powerhouse fucking nation militarily. And now we've always wanted to stay ahead of that, because the reason is nobody will attack America if we're literally the strongest nation in the world all the time. And that's been just the thought of the military mindset in general. Did you know we have the most aircraft carriers of any other country in the world? We have 12. The next nation below us has only 2. And that's Britain.
Oh, Britain. Oh.
Yeah. Can you fucking believe that? we have 10 more aircraft carriers than just the next powerful nation below us. Like we spend more money on defense budget than any other country in the world.
But you also have to admit there's a lot of fucking waste going on with that too.
Oh yes, I know. I live that shit. Now that was my big complaint in the military. Is I'd walk in and I'd be like, okay, why is this invoice for this stuff you're giving me? Literally, like the supplies they sent me to the desert with, just one soldier, just one airman. The supplies they sent me to the desert with could have paid 2 more soldiers for like 5 years.
No, yeah, man. No, and not only that, look, I am not a proponent of socialized healthcare in no way, shape, or form. But the more I try to understand the issue with healthcare in this country, I think the solution would be having a bare bones, catastrophic only public option that would compete with the private insurance companies. And of course,
public health care is triage.
What do you mean by that?
It's garbage. It's fucking field tent, like even in Canada where you can just walk into a hospital and get free healthcare. Everybody says it's all great. It's not.
No. And here's the thing. As long as the way I see it is we can, if we weren't for the fucking waste that goes on with the military within fucking Medicare, Medicaid, the VA, and CHIP, I think we really could have, like I'm saying, the kind of public option nobody really wants to fucking use. But no one, especially within the middle class, because it's the middle class that always gets fucked over, and I'm feeling it myself. With nobody in the middle class has to fucking worry about going broke over getting cancer or getting things that are beyond our control. And many of these fucking cancers, many of these things are coming from the very fucking multi-corporations out there that are producing the, you know, food and stuff like that. That are almost giving us the cancer. I don't want to be talking out of my ass, but I think there's clearly got to be, there's something going on with cancer, dude.
I don't know what the fuck you're talking about as I smoke this cigarette.
I don't mean to go look. Let me try to clarify it. Okay. With the amount of waste that goes on with the military industrial complex, which you yourself are agreeing with, I wonder if that money could be put towards healthcare in this country.
Well, let's get our terminology straight. And I've been wanting to change this for a long time. That's why sometimes on streams I correct people, because I want to spread this new term. You know, like, let's get the fucking words right, and then we can build an argument. So we don't have a problem with healthcare in this country. We have the greatest healthcare system in the world. We have a problem with health insurance.
Okay, if you want to,
the health insurance industry is what's hurting health care, but we have the best hospitals, the best doctors, the best technology in all the world. We have the best care, period. Health care in this country is the greatest. There's a reason why people from other nations come here for heart surgeries and shit. We have the very best hospitals, the most technologically advanced, medicines, and the best trained fucking doctors, because they want to be doctors because they get paid a lot of money. We have a problem with health insurance and pharmaceutical companies. That's our problem.
Oh no, I would agree. Now here's what the problem is, and well, granted, okay, let's be specific and put it on the health insurance companies. But here's how it plays out. Right now, for example, and I have to bring in personal stories. I know anecdotes don't count for shit, but it's the only way I could illustrate this. There was a relative of our family that came over from another country, and this person never contributed to the system here. Person never worked here or anything. This person came over here with cancer, okay, terminal cancer, and they were treated till they died. You know, it took like about a year and a half or so that this person was getting free treatment that the family never had to pay for. No one ever had to pay for it. Okay, this guy was treated for free, and ultimately he died anyway. Okay, if I, God forbid, end up with cancer, I'll get treatment, but then I'll have my bank account fucking seized. I'll have my fucking my house. You know, they'll make sure I pay the overinflated cost of that treatment. I have to, and I'm fucking middle class. That's a problem. That's a problem. Sure. And then now we had the open enrollment, which I went ahead and I just made sure to get it, especially after seeing a couple of people with cancer in my fucking family dying. I was like, let me just be on the fucking safe side. Thanks to the quote unquote Obamacare, which I don't agree with either. For right now, since I'm unemployed, my healthcare is minimal. But if it weren't for the Obamacare, I was looking at the cheapest policies being almost $800 a month. And even then, you still had a fucking out-of-pocket maximum of $7,500. So in other words, if I did go to the hospital, I was still stuck with $7,500. That's what I'm talking about.
Yeah, healthcare does. Good healthcare does cost a lot of money, and that's why insurance companies aren't going anywhere. The problem that we have is that there's no competition because of the laws in place. Yeah. Like we can't create a market that regulates the prices because there's no competition. Like healthcare, like if we were to pass a law allowing people to choose healthcare providers and health insurance from like the next state over.
Yeah, exactly. Cross state lines. Yeah.
It would create a conflict. It would create enough economic conflict that they would be forced to adjust their prices because they knew people would be able to go to their competitors. But given that can't happen, when you live in a state, you have to choose a healthcare provider of that state, and you can't go out of state. They know that they're just going to own you, so they just charge whatever the fuck they want. You know, and then there's we have to turn this massive profit in order to provide these drugs and stuff like that. Like, take AIDS, for instance. The AIDS cocktail, the HIV cocktail, could probably save millions of lives in Africa. Do you know why pharmaceuticals don't send AIDS medicines to Africa in bulk for just like no money at all to help these people?
No, tell me. I don't know.
It's because it's an incredibly strict cocktail of drugs that have to be taken at exact times without fail. And to the pharmaceutical companies, it's a waste of money to send it to Africa because most people don't own watches.
Yeah, no,
literally, like they don't know how to tell time over there. They don't. Well, they know how to tell time, but they don't have fucking clocks. A lot of African people are incredibly poor. Like they don't even have like the basic, standard care that it would be needed to take such a strict cocktail of HIV drugs. Like it would be literally a waste of money. And so that's the way the insurance companies and pharmaceuticals always judge things, on whether or not it's worth the millions of dollars to send the drugs to certain people.
Oh, but I agree with that. There, I do agree.
It literally would be a waste, because the moment they miss one of the drug regimens, the moment they're 5 minutes late taking whatever pill they're supposed to take or shot, it would do nothing. It would just be a waste of money after that. They die anyway, And so, yeah, when drugs get better, when technology gets better, things get cheaper. But we're still dealing with the problems of federal regulations preventing proper, I guess you say, like, free market competition.
Oh yeah, which is it's amazing that.
Did you know there's a drug that was made in Cuba by Cuban Cuban scientists, Cuban doctors, that it has been shown to stop the growth of lung cancer.
I'm a little dubious of that one, because I know that there's been this myth, and I think it comes from some sort of fucking, I forgot if it was like a scorpion or some shit like that. And
yeah, no. Hear me out. That's not the point. Whether it works or not, we still have to study it and everything like that. The point is, though, the point I'm trying to make is, let's just say, for argument's sake, that the drug is good. Okay, let's not get into the whether or not Cuba actually made a good drug or not, because the point of the conversation is this: because of the trade embargo with Cuba, because they're communist, because of Castro, they're not allowed to sell us that drug.
Right.
So here's another country that has developed a cure for something, and we're not even allowed to fucking borrow it and remanufacture it and get it out there to the masses because of politics. That's kind of fucked up.
Oh no, for sure. If that is true, if that is if that is a fact, yeah, no, I think that's extremely fucked up.
Yeah, right. So let's not get into an argument whether or not that drug actually works or not, because I only brought it up because of that. Like, let's just pretend it does work and the Cuban people have it, but we can't fucking get it from them and study it ourselves and have it peer reviewed and see how it works and put it through trials. And if it ever did work, we could start mass producing it ourselves, because we don't trade with Cuba. Now, I know Obama worked to lift trade embargo from Cuba, and for certain things he did. He was able to manage certain things being traded with Cuba, but we're not at all ready to. We're not at all caught up with trying to get Cuba liberated enough to kind of become more of a Puerto Rico to us. That's the way it started, though, in the 60s.
No, yeah.
We were going to build casinos there. We were going to build hotels. It was a huge tourist thing. They were going to become kind of a, the Cuban leaders were really inviting in, American capitalism and everything like that. And it looked like a very big, bright future for Cuba. It was going to be a little fucking city state of America. I mean, why not? It's like 80 miles off our coast, I mean, why wouldn't we want that? And then the revolution happened. Castro took over.
Yeah. And then,
and since then it's just been fucking free for all, trying to get fucking Cuba to change its ways so that we can kind of bring it on as a neighbor, No,
yeah. No, and that's where dialogue is so important, but dialogue to finally convince enough, because I've been to Cuba years ago, before it was the fucking trendy thing to do. And yeah, when I went to go visit family over there, man, it's sad to see how indoctrinated, and like, not even out of fear, not even just the fear of, that they don't want to be fucking ratted out by their neighbors. How some people really do see that fucking piece of shit, or when he was alive, that he was somehow their savior, that he had their best interest in mind. that is, I think, what's really at the core of what I at least try to do with my channel, you know. And a lot of people are like, oh man, why don't you fucking stop talking about you? And it's like, dude, first of all, it's my frame of reference. It's where my family's from. But I think it serves as a great example of that, you know. And then that in of itself becomes a religion, because I'm also very much about fucking trying to convince people to finally drop all religions and fucking finally realize there is no God. We only have each other. This life is all we know. But that dynamic behind, especially something like Islam, it's because I think Islam is the most of all the religions. It's the most toxic. It's the one that actually calls for the death of infidels who don't believe.
I've literally discovered there's over 2,000 religions in the world, believe it or not. And I've literally discovered religions of like African tribes that believe that like fucking cannibalism is the way to go. And I still think they're less harmless than fucking Islam.
I mean, on a microcosm, like, you know, on a very small scale, it's not good for them, because I forgot where it was. I think it was in Madagascar. There was the latest virus that came out this year. I wish I could tell you with specificity. There was a virus that was coming out from Madagascar, and I think it was traced down to a tribal custom of digging up corpses and not only dancing with them, eating them, fucking them, all that shit. And that's just... Whew.
Yeah. People do some weird shit, man. So
damn.
Anyway, it's the top of the hour here on this random stream with Nachi behind Magog. Everybody, thank you for joining us. We're not going to give it up, but I thought I'd take a break at the top of the hour and just address the chat a little bit, talk to everybody, and go ahead and say, you know, check out Nachi's channel. He's at like 940 subs. Let's get him to 1,000. Link is in the description. Also, my Streamlabs is down there if you guys want to help support this channel, help it grow. I did want to make an announcement for all the people listening that like the live streams. SideQuest and Magog and Medusa will resume after the holidays. We've all had, all my co-hosts and myself included, have had personal things come up, real life things, and it's the holidays, and we haven't been able to do the shows. But I assure you, SideQuest is returning in the new year, so look forward to that. And I appreciate everybody coming by and then listening to me and Nachi. And if you guys have any questions, go ahead and throw them in the chat, and we'll try to pay attention to them. Orange box me or orange box Nachi. And I think the last half of the hour, I think that was a great discussion. We probably could. I don't think it's a discussion that can be had all in one stream. You know, I don't think it'll ever like really come to an end in one stream. So maybe we can have you on again, Nachi. But I'd like to spend maybe the last half hour here while we're live, maybe talking about kind of switch gears a little bit and talk about what you see for your future. Now that we've talked about war and economics and everything for a good solid hour, what do you want out of this YouTube thing and your life right now? You know, where do you see yourself going?
Man, I would love to be able to make a living. If it's YouTube mostly, that's great. I always wanted to be able to make a living from creating my art, you know, doing my illustrations and stuff, and my writing, because I love writing, even though. Anyway, those two things. Now, how I can make a living, whether it's going to be YouTube or a combination of YouTube and fucking the old-fashioned way of, you know, maybe becoming like, you know, a writer or a freelance writer for certain, you know, mainstream outlets and stuff like that, I would love to do. And by the way, man, I have a great respect. The way that you did this thing now, the fact that you even called it the top of the hour, I love this. I'm learning so much from you, dude. It's no wonder you've been able to, fucking have as many subscribers as you have. Damn, you're up to 21,000. Now, here's one thing I'm surprised you don't have, because I was about to donate money to you, and I'm sorry I don't do it through Patreon, because I'm not at that point.
Right.
I'm surprised you don't have a PayPal.
I do. Thing. It's in the description. There's a PayPal pay me link, Magog Morskar. It's right there in the PayPal donations are welcome. And then there's Patreon, maker support, and my store.
No, because I'm looking at your Midnight Dreary episode 25.
Oh, that's Midnight Jury is kind of its own little spin-off thing. I don't put all the links there, but the main Magog videos and my live streams have a PayPal donation link and everything like that. Midnight Jury is kind of just one of those things for the Poe fans. Not everybody watches the Midnight Juries. But if you look at the watch link for this stream, it's all down there, you know.
Oh, no, I got it now. Now I got it here in the live stream, and I am making the donation as we speak.
Oh, you don't have to do that, man.
Oh, man, for sure, dude, for sure, man. I fucking have a lot of respect, even though I'm sorry, I can't keep up with every fucking YouTuber out there. I would love to. I started making a list. I mean, all I have to do is look at all the people that I'm subscribed to. I'm subscribed to like 300 people, dude. And that's the thing. It's really hard. It's hard.
Oh, yeah, no, for sure. I've got a lot of subscriptions. I got a few orange boxes. We got Fright Power Ranger. Good to see you. All hail Blue Whale. Krill be his name. Did you guys mean the Agori tribe? I'm honestly not sure what they're called. I've learned so much from like non-Western art studies and looking into some of the things just as a hobby that I can't remember every tribe I come across, but you may be right. I also see Brad Young in the chat, who has a wrench, my good loyal Magogonite Brad Young. And he asks, do you feel relieved since you've made videos? Yes, I do. I did have to take that break for finals. I felt really like I did a live stream saying that I kind of felt like I'd let my fans down, having to postpone live streams like SideQuest and everything had to postpone, and then not being able to do videos because the school was just awful. You know, the last couple weeks of school, I had like 3 research papers and finals to study for. It was just so I can't, but I feel like I came back with a bang. I gave everybody 2 videos this week, one a regular video, and then of course the Bearing collab, and then I did Midnight Jury last night. So I feel like I've really kind of caught up and let the fans have a little Magog, you know. And Thrash Metal Assault says, agreed, behind Magog is cool. I'd just like to see his face. Most of the time I'm on camera, but this was kind of an impromptu thing. I was over on Nachi's channel. We were talking. Billy dropped out. Nachi was like, hey, you want to go over to your channel and do a different stream about, and you know, and because that stream was really about him kind of catching up with Billy. So it was just more of an impromptu thing. I just popped over here, didn't have time to set up the camera, the lights, and all that stuff. We just kind of hopped on and wanted to have a discussion. But don't worry. Most of the streams I do, I'm going to be on camera, even if I'm out of character. I like to be on camera so that people can kind of see me as I am, you know, and see the guy behind Magog, you know.
Yeah, I've been debating, should I just show my face and stuff like that, you know, it make things a lot easier, but I kind of like keeping the little Nachi free icon. I like this little gimmick that I've created. I'm going to keep it going, but my videos, I definitely want to get more and more into doing illustrations. And as far as what it's really about, this, like what you and I are talking about, I love this. I love more than political commentary, social commentary, especially if it could involve in solving the damn problems. And so many of these problems, I believe, are so fucking easy to solve. I mean, at its very core, like what we were talking about, I think before when it was with my stream, like in terms of poverty, at least here in the United States, dude, the real solution, it really is this. Don't have fucking kids you're not ready to raise.
That's a big one. I mean, they say the top 3 are don't drop out of high school. Don't have kids before you're married, essentially, or you know, like you would say, if you don't believe in marriage, at least try not to have kids that you're not ready for, and don't do drugs. Those are like the top 3 that will pretty much guarantee that eventually in your life you'll reach the middle class.
Yeah, no, I know the first one. I thought the third one was something different. I think get a job or something like that was the third one. Just hold on to a fucking job. Just try to fucking hold on to a goddamn job, dude. It's
but even that, like, it has been proven that even if you just like go to school, you can make more money And
Oh, yeah,
you
for
can
sure.
pay your bills and stuff just off of like government grants and scholarships. You don't have to necessarily get a job. And that's probably why I don't remember it being on the list, but you could be right. But definitely the drugs thing. I mean, don't get me wrong. I don't give a fuck about marijuana. I wish it was legal. You know, I know enough people that smoke it and I pretty much know it's harmless. But outside of that, I'm pretty sure that you're going to have a bad life if you're a heroin addict.
Oh no, for sure.
You know, I mean, that's just a gimme. You know, personally, I don't care what people put in their own bodies because I do believe in that personal freedom in America. But at the same time, I don't think you're going to have a very successful life if you're on meth. That's just from observable truth, I think. You know, like I live in Arkansas and we are pretty heavy meth. Like we're like the #2 meth state next to like Missouri or something. And trust me, you see people around and you're just like, how, like, God damn, like you're wasting away quite literally. Like you know, look like a fucking zombie, you know?
No, for sure.
Go to Walmart at 2 a.m. where I live. Trust me, you'll see some people where you're like, man, you guys need help. You guys, you ain't got any teeth left, you know?
No, yeah.
It's like, I love meth. It makes me feel great, but I kind of just have to eat applesauce. I can't even chew anything anymore, you know?
No.
So I think if what you said is on the list, then don't do drugs is surely should be on at least the hardcore drugs. Don't do that crazy shit. Should be number 4.
Yeah, I would agree. No, look, I looked it up right now. It's from the Brookings Institute.
Right.
I'm actually looking at the webpage right now. 3 simple rules for poor teens should follow to join the middle class. First, many poor children come from families that do not give them the kind of support that middle-class children get from families, which that doesn't really say. Anyway, that doesn't sound like something that they could do. It's an observation. Second, as a result, these children enter kindergarten far beyond their more advantaged. Fuck, I thought they were going to have it really clear here. But anyway, I don't see the drugs. Like one of the ththings is that don't drop out of school.
Definitely.
Don't have children out of wedlock. And I thought the other one was really just, trying to hold on to a fucking job. You know,
yeah.
And it's,
well, there's other statistics though. That could be just the one list of like the top 3, but there's stuff on that list that list could probably be 10 things long.
Oh no, for sure, man.
I mean, because there's another one too. Like, it is statistically proven that children who are raised in single parent households don't do as well in life.
Of course, man.
You know. And that's why I've always hated that kind of like feminist argument that, like you don't need no man, shit like that. And I'm like, it doesn't matter if you're like a lesbian couple, at least 2 parents in the household has proven that children do better.
Yeah. No, and I can see where that probably came from. The whole thing, you don't need a man, is in the terms of like women who are just being physically abused.
Sure.
Beat by their
jaded people.
Weird.
Jaded people, when they overcome the bad relationships, they have a tendency to fall into that. I'll just do this on my own. And that's psychological. I can't argue with that. I do the same thing. I've been through enough ringers that I'm like, fuck it. Whatever. If someone comes along, I'm not going to say no, but I'm not actively like, I no longer hold the value of my life based on whether or not I'm in a relationship.
No, you shouldn't. Yeah, you shouldn't. I think the value of my life comes more than anything from that, having this one thing that I love doing, which, is the art and the writing and stuff. And especially if I'm going to be doing art and writing about something specific like social commentary and all that. And once you have that purpose that drives you, then you will find people, and you will find a partner from that point on. But I think
so too. Yeah, I think so too.
So you guys do shit together. And but I think for sure, it seems to me, that the root cause of the world's, it's not just here in the United States, the world's problems is people having more children than they can afford to raise. And that's where it gets tricky, because you want to give people the right to do whatever they want. But I don't understand why anybody wants to complicate their lives with more than 3 children. Like,
well, yeah, sure. But oftentimes it's the poorer, less educated people that actually can dedicate their lives to love. Like that. What else are they going to do? I mean, I know maybe that's just anecdotal because I live in a state that's pretty poor. Like we've always been poor. Like I remember when the recession hit and everybody's like economy just bottomed out and everything. And when you looked at the map of the United States, like Arkansas and Mississippi were in the green. And everybody's like, how are you not affected by the economy bubble bursting? And we were like, because we've always been poor. Like, like, hello, welcome to our level now, you know? But I do live in one of these states with a lot of small southern towns where people get married right out of high school and they just live their lives. I mean, they just live in a little house and they work their little job and they have fucking ton of kids. And that's just what they want out of life. That's still just a big thing down here, especially in the South. Is like when I got out of high school, it was already hammered in my head that if you don't go to college, you better get yourself a job and get married, have kids. That's just the way we were taught down here. You know, good family values means having a family too, you know. So, you know, obviously I kind of didn't follow that. I went into the military and traveled the world and all this and that. And, you know, but for the most part, I mean, you see it all the time, especially in the Midwest and the South. There's small towns where people, that's all they do is just, they get married, they have kids, they find whatever job they're going to do, and they just live their life.
Right.
And you can't really stop that, you know?
No. What I think what you could do is you could try to enlighten people, and you could try to just do that. It's like, listen, man, you really want to have a good life. You don't want to be stuck in this poverty cycle. It's don't, you know, for sure, at the very least, have a job. Have a job. Better yet, have a career, so that when you lose this job, you're at least in a good sort of direction, so you can get another job within that career, and you keep building and working towards something higher. You know, and then if you're gonna have kids, have them with someone you love, and someone you're gonna see yourself raising those children to adulthood. And then do your family the favor of not fucking burdening yourself with more than 3 kids. I also don't think having a single child is a good thing either. I grew up as an only child, and that warps your perspective in life. I grew up with a very, I wouldn't say entitled, but I had a very distorted view of how like everything just kind of revolved around me. That was the problem.
Sure, yeah.
That fucked me up when I hit the job market, and I realized, what? I'm not as special as my mom fucking made me. My mother didn't fucking spoil me. It was very difficult to get compliments out of my mother, and my father was kind of disattached and shit like that. So it wasn't that, but you know, I didn't have to share this house with anyone else. You know,
right.
I didn't have to share a whole lot of resources, dude. When I hit the fuck, and especially when I moved to New York City, and you're like, dude, take a number, take a number.
Right. Yeah.
That doesn't help. But the last thing I was going to say about this is I was watching this documentary by NPR on Frontline called Poverty in America. And of course, in the end, who they're trying to criticize are the rich white men, you know, who are the developers, and you know, they're taking advantage of these programs and stuff like that for low-income housing and pocketing $4 million. But at one point, they do show this one woman, right? They show a single mother with 7 kids, 7 children, and she's living out of a I think her van. Yet they don't fucking bother to investigate that. Like, they're using that to tug at your heartstrings. And now when I see a woman with a single mother with 7 kids, my first question is, where's the father? And how many fathers are there to those 7 children? Why aren't you digging there, NPR? And NPR won't do that. NPR sees this woman, granted, hey, it's her right, it's her liberty to have that many children. But don't paint the picture that society is so cruel for not giving her a fucking home. And by the way, I've seen Section 8. I know how that works, not because I've ever been on it, but long story short, I've had my encounters with Section 8, and I'll just leave it at that. Dude, there is so much goddamn waste that goes on through that program alone. I can't even imagine.
Oh, yeah.
I've been on Medicaid too. There was a time that I literally was under the poverty line, and I qualified for Medicaid. And I remember when I finally got a job and I was going to cancel my Medicaid, the actual worker was like, no, you don't have to give this up. You can still be on it. No, don't worry. We can fudge the numbers here. I was like, wow. And that's what NPR will never fucking cover. And like, those are the type of things that I'd like to talk about, man, because they paint a picture that's not complete, you know, and I think that's why we continue having these problems. And within another documentary that I saw, again about poverty, and this one was called The Death of the Middle Class, and that one was by Bill Moyers. With that one, they showed this one family where one of the kids finally managed to break out, and he break out of the poverty cycle. And one of the things that got him that was when he joined the military and he went off to Iraq. Yep. You know, and they were trying to point like, wow, how ironic. We don't have fucking jobs for our kids here, but risk your life over in the fucking Middle East and they'll put money in your pocket. And those are the things that, man, I wish.
Yeah, the military is a good way to pull ahead if you ain't got nothing else to do in life, you know, until you're trying to figure, like, I didn't know what I wanted to be when I grew up. I was one of those that just wanted to try all kinds of different things, and I didn't really care to go to college. I worked with my hands. I've had a job since I was fucking 16 years old. Unlike my siblings who all went to college right out of high school, I was like, man, I don't know what I want to do. So I worked a bunch of odd end jobs until finally I'd had enough, and I joined the Air Force. And that was probably one of the best decisions because I came back from Iraq with like 30 G's saved up, had no debt, all my bills were paid, and I had the GI Bill waiting for me to go to school for free. You know, you know, not a bad gig, you know, as long as you're willing to do the work and be a good, you know, and follow orders and stuff and not get like a dishonorable discharge, do something stupid. But I think, yeah, I think a big portion of the argument for the poverty too is bad spending. I mean, obviously governmental spending, way too much waste, you know, way too much, you know, handing money out for, you know, who spends, it's like the military, who spends $20,000 on a toilet seat, you know, like government bureaucracy is a huge problem, but I think spending too. I've seen people who can't afford to feed their kids, but they got an iPhone.
Yeah.
And they have a good computer and they have, you know, and I know you need internet these days because you can't even apply for jobs anymore without the fucking internet. But for fuck's sake, I mean, the way I live my life within a budget, like you have to learn. Like I missed I was kind of on the tail end of that because I was born in the 80s. They at least taught us a little something in high school. They got rid of all of those programs. I actually had a class where we, part of the class was learning how to write checks properly. They don't do that anymore. Hell, they're barely teaching cursive anymore, you know? And I hate that. I loved when I took, my economics class in middle school. They actually talked about budgeted, you know, how to budget your adult life, you know, how not to just spend your fucking money, you know, and that always kind of bothered me, you know. It's like I'll see somebody living in a trailer. They got like 3 kids running around, barely wearing clothes. You know, they're fucking always talking about how they're poor and that they're living off of ramen noodles and they can't afford this, they can't afford that. But then I'll look outside and they've got like a fucking car with rims on it and a sound system. And I was like, how many thousands of dollars did you just put into that piece of shit? Yeah. Like that Oldsmobile Delta 88 out there has 20 fucking inch gold rims on it. And you're talking about how you're fucking, you just bad spender. That's all you are. You know, like I put so much money into Magog, but that's because I saved and I didn't spend money on shit other than food, gas, and fucking clothes now and again when I needed new clothes. I mean, that was it. I wasn't buying shit for myself. I wasn't buying video games. I wasn't buying new things. I wasn't buying new phones. I went cheap with my phone. I got the Straight Talk, $45 a month, unlimited everything, and a fucking $100 phone that was unlocked so I could just put a SIM card in it and it'll work. I wasn't doing any of that shit. And I wasn't getting into debt either. I didn't have a credit card until I was like 28 years old. You know? Like that, you've got to learn how to budget what you do make. Because even if you don't make a lot of money, if you live in the right area with the cost of living is low, gas prices are lower, food prices are lower, you can actually save hundreds of dollars a month if you don't go out to the bars every weekend or go out clubbing every weekend or, you know, things like that. But people have their vices, and that's a big problem too, is spending. Nobody fucking teaches people in high school, middle school and stuff how to budget their life anymore, how to pay their taxes properly, how to write checks properly. These things, why did we get rid of those programs? You know?
I don't know, man. And that's the amazing thing for this country being a capitalist economy and, you know, trying to be the example to the rest of the world. It's amazing that they don't properly teach why capitalism and the free market are the superior system. They don't. It's amazing that there's hardly any economics. And I went to private school, and even at my private school, I only got a half semester of economics. That was an elective to top it off, and I took it because I wanted to. I wanted to learn about economics once and for all. I always wanted to have my own business. It is amazing that's, I think that's probably one of the most important, relevant subjects in anybody's life.
See, this is where you and I kind of diverge. I understand your argument. I don't necessarily disagree with it, but I don't think our number one problem is people having too many kids at a young age. I think our number one problem is our education system has conformed to the idea that higher education is the only choice out of high school.
Like, I'd agree.
And so they formed high school and like early education into just preparing people for college. When my dad and mom were in high school back in the 70s, their high schools had tech schools in them. If you didn't want to go to college, you could go and take a shop class and actually get certified as a mechanic, as a welder, and all this and that. It wasn't part of higher education. You could do it right there at high school. And by the time you graduated and got your high school diploma, you also had a certificate of training, and you had you could get a job. You could get a damn job. High school used to prepare you to just get a job. Like, we need to be pumping people out of education that are actually going to get jobs and help the economy by getting those jobs. The jobs are there. People just don't want them. For some reason, I hate one of my biggest pet peeves is when somebody comes up to me and they're like, I can't find a job. Nobody's hiring, all this and that. And then I'll drive around town and be like, McDonald's has a hiring sign. Walmart has a hiring sign. That tire center has a hiring sign. There's jobs fucking everywhere. And no, that's kind of below me. I want to kind of this job over here. I'm like, fuck you.
Yeah.
Fuck you for saying that job is below you. Fuck you. I'm a janitor. I clean toilets. Go fuck yourself.
Yeah. No, for sure, man. For sure. That's something that I'm amazed. First of all, I didn't know that about public schools, that they actually had those training certificate programs.
But then,
and why would they have stopped?
Right. Well, through the 80s, what happened was the big technological boom and this big push. You got to go to college if you want to have a good life. You got to go to college if you want to have a good career. And it was the baby boomers who put that onto their kids, because the baby boomers kind of came up going, college was the greatest time of my life because I want my kids to go. I want my kids to have a good life. I'm going to provide this for them. And it just got hammered into our heads that you got to go to college, got to go to college, got to go to college. And it was like, what if you're not really wanting to go to college, or what if you're not good at college? How many guys I've known that aren't book smart, but they can take a carburetor apart and put it back together blindfold. People have different talents, right? And so, like Bryson Wester there in the chat says, I'm ASC certified in auto repair because of high school. But those programs went away and they became part of higher education. You had to go to a tech school after college and get certified and pay all this money and stuff. That used to be provided. My dad told me that the high school he went to in fucking Ohio and West Virginia, when they moved to West Virginia, and even in my mom's high school in South Carolina, they had you could learn to be a fucking welder, electrician, plumber in high school as electives. And it's crazy to me that they got rid of all those programs and just formed school to be these like standardized tests, get you out the door and ready for college. What about the kids who don't want to go to college or can't get into a college? You're leaving them behind with no skills. Absolutely no skills.
How do you think we could solve that? Is that because now that's the other thing that almost becomes like, okay, if I want to solve that, it's almost like that has to become your life's focus and mission for like about 2 or 3 years. To
me, I think we have to completely rebuild the early education system. I think college should still be a choice, obviously, but I think technical certifications and technical jobs that people do with their hands should be free. They should be taught in high school again. They should be available for people to go and be like, you know what? I can't find a job. I'm tired of working at, the Tasty Freeze for $4 an hour plus tips as a waitress or whatever, or the person who brings the fucking car, the car hop. I really want to just do something, and I'm not the college type. I'm not interested in college. I don't want like a fucking STEM degree. There are people out there that don't necessarily want to make millions of dollars and start their own business and do things like that. Some people just want a good job. They just want a good job. And when they have options for good jobs because they have the training and it doesn't cost them a fucking fortune, our country would turn around real quick. You know what would happen if we just literally went back to that? Just having high schools have tech schools inside them so that when you got to your upper levels, 10th, 11th, and 12th grade, and you were trying to decide what you wanted to do, there was a fucking building over there that you could go and learn to be an electrician, something to fall back on in case college doesn't work out. That would just change our country altogether, honestly.
No, I agree. No, it's
and it should be free. It should be provided by the fucking state. It should not be like, oh, you want to go to tech school and learn to be a plumber? That's 10 grand in tuition per year or per semester. Fuck you. No, they used to teach that shit for free.
Try having that conversation and try mentioning that word free to most libertarian types and stuff, and then but now the state, and that's where it's interesting. Like this whole,
it's not free. I mean, think about it. Somebody's paying for it. Yeah, it's taxpayers. But I personally would rather I would rather my tax money go to teaching the next generation that is getting left behind, the ones that aren't going to college, to teach them a skill that they can get a job and become taxpayers themselves instead of just mooching off the system. I would much rather my taxes go to that than, I don't know, fucking Planned Parenthood or something, where they fucking just, do abortions or whatever. Like I'm not going to get into that argument. I accept that, it exists or whatever have you, but I don't think our taxes necessarily should pay for it because they also charge people. They also are a business. They make people, they make money off of it. So I think that should be a free market thing, but you get what I'm saying though. Like some of our taxes go to ridiculous shit when they should be going to education. Now, I'm not saying all education should be free. I'm not the Bernie Sanders, like, we're going to pay off all your student loans. With what money, motherfucker? Like, if you go to college, it's going to cost you some fucking money. If you go to a higher education, it's going to cost you some money. But there should be programs in high school to allow students that aren't going to go to college, who don't necessarily have the college smarts, but they just want to get a job, a good job that pays decent, and give them those technical skills. There's nothing wrong with that. Get them an apprenticeship right out of high school because they took the proper classes to get a certificate to be an electrician. And right out of high school, there's all these construction companies going, fresh out of high school, took the classes. Let's get you an apprenticeship, get you some on-the-job experience. Let's get you going. Truck driving used to actually be offered in my dad's high school. You can learn how to drive a fucking big rig. Well, you know how much money truckers make?
Oh, yeah.
If you don't want to go to college and you don't mind working your fingers to the bone the first 5 or 10 years you're out of college or out of high school, trucker ain't a bad gig, because by the end of that, you'll have enough money that you can either continue being a trucker or you could probably fucking retire and do something else. Yeah. Because truckers make good money once you have the over-the-road experience.
Right. No. I've got a couple truckers in my family, so I definitely know that one.
I was a trucker too, man. Ain't nothing wrong with it. Honest work.
But I thought that trucking is going to become one of those obsolete industries. I don't know if it's going to be within the next 5 years, but quite possibly 10 or 15. And that is the scary thing, how artificial intelligence, which is something else I want to start learning slowly but surely. I want to get the coding down first, but eventually I would love to.
Oh, you're talking about like those self-driving big rigs?
Yeah. No, yeah, but they're already.
Yeah, I have no doubt that one day things like that will be automated. But then they're still going to have a human element, somebody watching through a camera, monitoring the systems, and that creates jobs.
Yeah, I do believe that I can't imagine artificial intelligence becoming its own species, where now it's got its own fucking agency and it's got a consciousness and it's got fucking, okay, we're directing ourselves. We don't need the humans anymore. Or maybe I don't think that will happen in our lifetime, but it is taking over a lot. There's a lot of shit and then the population control will be very helpful. If we don't have 7.6 billion people on the goddamn planet to fucking make they're fed and they're sheltered and they're all that, and people will be a little more responsible with the most natural impulse we have. That's the thing. I totally get it. I get why. And like I was talking about that this morning with my wife, and for the first time, like she described it in such a way where I kind of understood it. It's true. The problem with a lot of poor people, and you kind of tapped into it as well, is like that's all they got. All they have is that. And that's the most natural impulse.
Sure. Yeah. But I don't necessarily, I don't necessarily believe that we should also go back to the days of medieval time where everybody had kids and had to farm their own food and live on our own little bits of land and things like that either, and go back to the feudal system or anything. We need to push forward. I got an orange box here. Fright Power Ranger says, "How much do truckers make?" I hear it's nuts. The lowest amount I've ever known a trucker to make is people just starting out in the industry with no over the road experience at all. Because a lot of the higher trucker companies that pay more need they need like at least 2 years over the road driving experience, right? So some of the companies like Swift and USA Trucking, they are the ones that take the people right out of trucking school and fresh with a CDC. And those guys are CDL. And those guys, they start out about 28 cents to 32 cents a mile. Now, that doesn't sound like a lot until you get out on the road and you drive from Little Rock, Arkansas to LA and back. That's a damn good paycheck.
Right.
So it also depends on the routes you take, and truckers have a choice on what routes they take. And so once you get that over the road experience, though, then you get a job with a different trucking company that pays you upwards of 68 to 72 cents a mile. And that's where you make some serious money. And then owner drivers, people who buy their own truck and pay it off and maintain their own truck and everything, can charge whatever fuck they want. And I know guys who are owner operators that they drive local routes so they can be home every night, so they're not doing the long fucking week away from home, week away from the kids and wife thing anymore. And they'll run a local route from like Little Rock to Dallas and back, which is a 10-hour drive back and forth, 5 hours down, 5 hours back. And they'll make fucking $2,000 a week hauling lumber, hauling cars,
No, fuck yeah, that's a living. No, and then the ones that just basically then just start hiring other truckers, and then they're just running it like a business, from behind a desk. And when you get to that level, but yeah, the opportunities are definitely out there, man. And it's a shame that the information doesn't reach everyone,
Yeah. And, you got to hustle in life. Jesus, and I don't mean like the illegal hustle, be a gangster, sell drugs, but you do have to get out there. Like when I started as a janitor before the military, I was just picking up contracts with the guys who hired me. Then I got out of the military and had a little trouble figuring out what I was going to do because I didn't expect to leave the military. I got injured in Iraq. So here I was starting my life all over again back in 2012. Didn't know what the fuck I was going to do. I took a year off, lived with my grandfather, helped take care of him until he passed away. And so I was kind of his live-in caregiver for until he died. And then after that, I was like, I got to get a job. I'm living off of my military savings. And so I went out and I just hustled, man. I just got out there, started reaching out. I started applying for every job I fucking could. I didn't care if it was below me or something I had never done and I didn't have experience. I applied for fucking everything. And you would be surprised how many people were like, hey, come on in for an interview,
Right.
But these people were just, I applied for 2 jobs this week and I didn't hear nothing back. I'm all depressed. No, I was applying for like 28 jobs a fucking week. And finally I landed one, which was with a company called ETS at the time. It was called ETS. It's Blue Tracks now. And it was maintaining trackers in money at banks so that if they're robbed, they throw the tracker in the bag and the robber walks out and we can track him with GPS. And then the cops go and get him, Yeah. And that was a fun job for a while, but I started losing contracts. That company started to take a different direction. They were trying to push their product more into retail and get out of banking. And so I dropped that, went back to school, and decided to start my own janitorial company at the same time. And I picked up my own contracts. I cleaned a school, I cleaned a couple bank branches, and then eventually I got to a point where I got a contract cleaning apartment buildings after people move out, apartments.
Right.
And that was good money because I had the experience and the know-how from working janitorial practically, you know, from like the age of 19 to 22 before I joined the military. And then I kind of learned from that business and I hustled, man. I got out there and was like, hey, I'm a cleaner. Do you guys need this? Do you guys need that? I started going into these locations. Hey, I got a truck full of cleaning supplies. I'll clean your office building for you for cheap. Like I'll undercut everybody you've got, you know? And people like that because, you know, sometimes you walk into a dentist office and I'm like, what are you paying your cleaner right now? Oh, $130 a night to take out the trash and to wipe things down. And I'm like, nah, pay me 75.
Well,
You know,
those are the actual prices, by the way.
it depends. It depends on how often they want to clean. You know, because like some offices they only want you clean like 3 times a week. You know, it just depends on the contract. Like the apartment building, I only clean when people move out. But because of where the apartment is, there's a steady flow of like military coming in and out. It's the same apartment complex I live at. So that was a selling point too, because I walked into my apartment manager's, office to give her my rent check. And I was just like, who you got cleaning this place? You know, and she's like, oh, these ladies over here, but they're about to leave. And so me and the maintenance guy have been doing it. And I'm like, oh, hell no. I was like, I'll do it. I live here. Shit, I'll just walk to work, you know? And so she gave me the contract and it's $75 for a 1-bedroom, $95 for a 2-bedroom, and $110 for a 3-bedroom.
Wow.
And if 4 people a week, I've had busy seasons where I've cleaned upwards of four apartments a week. You can make $2,000 cleaning an apartment complex a month, easy. Now there's an ebb and flow to that. There's certain months where I only made 1,000, but then the next month I'd make 3,000. You know, so it balances out. But you've got to get out there and hustle those contracts if you want to work for yourself, especially if you want to work for yourself. If you don't want to work some retail gig, find something you wouldn't mind doing and just hustle the shit out of it. And that's basically what YouTube is too. You've got to sell yourself.
No, I'm finding that out not the hard way, but I am discovering. I think my biggest thing, you were right. You hit the nail on the head. It's the marketing. You got to market yourself, and you got to be out there, and you got to be. And in a sense, I'm sort of marketing myself right now. That's kind of like I was like, dude, let's do the stream through your channel. You know, let's and start reaching out and stuff like that.
Yeah, but because YouTube has been so generous with me, with other bigger guys inviting me to streams, and like I've done the YouTube Saints, I've done Andy Worski, I've done collabs with Bearing and Undoomed. I also turn around because of that and I give back. So when you were all like, can we do it on your channel? I already knew why you were asking that. And I was like, sure, yeah, let's go over there, you know, because we all need to help each other. We're all in business together, believe it or not. Even if we disagree on certain ideological points, we're all creators. We're all artists. We're all entertainers. We're all commentators. We're all political pundits, you know, and we've got to kind of help each other out as best we can. Now, there are certain people that reach out and they want help. They want to collab. They want you to shout out their channel or whatever. And I'll have you on a stream or whatever if I can schedule it. But there's some people who are like, hey, can you help me boost my channel and all this and that? But I'll go to their channel and they only have like 1 video. I mean, you do have to sell yourself first.
No, for sure.
You have to get out there. You have to prove to people that you're willing to do the work. You know, you can't just go to a bigger YouTuber and be like, can you shout out my channel? And then they go over there and there's like 3 videos and you don't have a library and your last video was like a month ago. I mean, this is a job. You have to dedicate more time to it than just an occasional video if you want to make it a job. Now, if it's just your hobby and you just like to talk and you don't really care about the money because you have a good day job, that's fine too. I don't judge people at all. It depends on where you are in life. But people have to have the mindset. People need to stop having this mindset that somehow making money from YouTube is a bad thing. There is a certain group, there are groups of people on YouTube where like, I do this for free because I feel like these points need to be made and we shouldn't make money off of it. And that's fine if that's what they want to do. But I hate this like holier than thou, like, oh, you sold out, you already make so-and-so on Patreon, or you already have t-shirts out. And it's like, congratulations, you just figured out that I don't want to clean toilets the rest of my life.
No, yeah.
There's nothing wrong with making a little money off of doing something you love. There's nothing wrong with that.
Not at all, dude. Not at all, man. That's and it's not just the American dream. I think ultimately that's what pushes civilization forward. And that's why I think when you see this whole thing, it seems like it's, it's down to capitalism versus communism. I think the reason why it really does come down to almost this binary choice is because I think when it comes to economics, it's a matter of either allowing a society where individuals have the right to own property or you don't. It's really, I think it really does come down to just property rights. And either you're allowing people to have property rights or you don't. And the moment you start getting into, oh yeah, you can have a house, but not two, or you can make 100 grand, but not 150 grand a year. Now you start, that's why you get the Venezuelas. Because Venezuela is one of those where it's like, no, we're not going to be communist. That's crazy, but there's only so much you can own here, and that's the problem.
Right.
So when I hear people say, "Oh, that's a sellout," or that you're being ethnocentric because capitalism isn't always the answer, I'm like, no, actually, it is. It really fucking is, dude. It really does come down to property rights and the free market.
Right. And that's why I treat the YouTube job the same way I did the cleaning contract job. I put myself out there and I was constantly just like, hey, everybody, check this out. Here's a new video. I put in the work because my paycheck does come from the generosity of my wonderful fans. Yeah. But that doesn't mean it's not a job because like Fried Power Ranger, who orange boxed in the chat there, says if you pay taxes on YouTube money, then YouTube is a job, period. And I agree with that because we do pay taxes on it. We pay taxes on AdSense. We pay taxes on Patreon. We pay taxes on the Teespring merchandise sales. Yes. All of that, I will get 1099s from all those companies.
Yeah.
It is a job, and I want to make it my job. Now, some people don't want to make it their job. They just want to make a little extra cash, but then during the day, do the job that they love to do, their real life job. That's fine too. Like, look at Undoomed. He does a video whenever he can, but he's already got a job as like a video editor or something like that in Hollywood. And he loves that job, and that's what he does. So YouTube is kind of just more of a side business for him. And he's been able to make that work for him. But he didn't take the route that other people did. Now, like, look at Mundane Matt. He made that his job, And now that YouTube really fucked up this year and the adpocalypse happened and all that stuff happened, that really hurt him. That hurt those guys that have established themselves over the past, 2 to 5 years, making money off of ads and everything. I kind of missed that when I started my channel. The adpocalypse was pretty much already starting to happen, but money does drive the world, and you got to find you don't always have to do what you love to do. Sometimes you just got to get a skill and go to get a job. So that's what it is. And I've done that for years. I've done it since I was 16 years old. I've worked everything from retail to janitorial to construction. I even worked state fairs for a while. Every time the state fair would come into town in November, I'd do cleanup at the state fair, chucking garbage. Yeah. I took whatever job contract I could get my fucking hands on.
No, that's, yeah. I'm discovering a lot about you and why you are where you are now. And I'm kind of not. I've been a little bit, I wouldn't say lackadaisical and lazy, not at all. I think I've probably spread myself a little too thin with YouTube. But then that's my other problem. Like, I'm wondering, what do you see as the future of YouTube with all this fucking the monetization? Which, ironically enough, when I did my last video on Trump, here's the interesting thing, dude. The last video I did on Trump about, hey, should Trump be impeached? I forgot what I titled it. That one is monetized. That one is fucking monetized. Now, when I do any videos with the word atheism, oh, forget it, demonetized. Which is kind of odd because you would think that people who are anti-Trump are probably atheists as well. But it is interesting what YouTube chooses to monetize and demonetize. And I was wondering to what degree YouTube's might go the way of fucking VidMe. But I don't know. Do you have any? Are you privy to any information as to the longevity of YouTube?
Not really. No, at this point, nobody fucking knows what's going to happen. But there are people who have hopes that 2018 will be better. Maybe things will just kind of even out and calm down after a while. Maybe these advertisers will come back because they realize that there's just no controlling the full complexity of the internet, especially on a platform like YouTube that gets like 400 minutes of content up, or 400 hours of content uploaded to it a fucking hour, or whatever. And it's like, you of course, you can't control all the terrible videos that might have an ad play at the beginning of it. And maybe people fucking finally come to their fucking common senses because it's all reactionary. Somebody wrote an article about an ad playing before a fucking Nazi video, and the advertisers got scared because for some reason they had it in their heads that when people watch videos on YouTube, suddenly the advertisers have something to do with that video. No. I don't know a single person who watches YouTube and goes, huh, this guy's an asshole. And a Ford fucking commercial played. Ford must be assholes. You know, like nobody makes that connection. Everybody knows it's just a damn ad, you know?
No, for sure. I'm surprised that YouTube just doesn't focus on, first of all, but if you're going to monitor anything, monitor the fucking pedophile videos. Monitor those. Monitor any fucking, I don't know if there've ever been any snuff videos, but the ISIS videos too. I mean, they should know by now what they should be focusing on and what not to, man. You know, and the fact that there were, and I'm not even versed in the pedophile videos scandals that have come about, but it's just amazing. And I think Daniel Tosh, the comedian, he was one of the few people within the mainstream media that was actually starting to point that out. He was like, dude, you guys are demonetizing political content videos, but fucking you're letting the pedophile ones fucking slip through.
Right.
What the fuck?
So, you know, I think it's just going to be a waiting game. It's a good question to ask, but I honestly have no direct answer. There's no telling what's going to happen next year, you know, or the years to come. We're just going to have to try to adapt to the changes. New platforms hopefully maybe will rise up and you know, finally maybe one will come around. VidMe didn't do it. VidMe ended up closing their doors, but maybe one day one of them will give YouTube a run for its money and make advertisers think and come back. Maybe they Google will wisen up and be like, we need to stop playing these fucking identity politics and just run the fucking platform and obey federal law, and that's it. You know, but that's a whole other discussion for another time. We've been going for 2 hours.
No, for sure, bro. I gotta get going myself, man.
Yeah, dude. I think it's about time to bring this to an end. Thanks for coming on, Nachi. Always a good conversation, man.
No, and thanks for having me on, bro. And thanks for jumping in on mine, man. It was a nice little surprise to see you commenting there. And I was like, oh, for sure, dude.
Yeah, just saw that you were live. Thought I'd say hi. Before I leave, I've got a Streamlabs donation from Jack T. Ripper. He says, have a Merry Christmas, you beautiful wizard. Keep up the good work. I thank you so much for the donation. Thank you. Yes. Ass rape, everybody. Merry Christmas, ass rape. You know?
That they love it.
Right. Magog, make Magoogle. Yeah, sure. I'll have to get around to that. Thanks everybody for coming by and watching. I appreciate it. Nachi, once again, his channel link is in the description. Everybody go check out his work. And we'll see you next time.
Happy holidays, motherfuckers.
Peace.
Later.